I didn't think the pain from the shingles rash would affect simple, everyday tasks like bathing, getting dressed, or even walking around. I was wrong. Though not everyone at risk will develop it, 99% of people over the age of 50 already have the virus that causes shingles, and it could reactivate at any time. I developed it, and the blistering rash lasted for weeks. Don't learn the hard way, like I did. Talk to your doctor or pharmacist today. Sponsored by GSK.
United 5 points clear, and in fact before City play again we could well be 8 points clear.
Well, yeah, there's a game to win against a team fighting for their lives, etc. before that, so it's not in the bag yet, despite what the bookies might be saying. Why are they paying out on a United win already, Ed?
Well, this is Betfred, who likes Fred Doan, who likes to pay out, and it's a good piece of publicity for him. He did it before, didn't he, in 2003 when he paid out on United and won the title, and they're 12 points clear, only for Arsenal to come storming back and win the title. So it cost him something like £500,000 at that time. But good publicity all around, because the amount of press coverage he got as a result.
He's obviously a gambling man, and he's basically betting the price of how much it's going to cost him to pay out against the price of all this free publicity that we're giving him on the Rantcast.
Very true. And there's no publicity more valuable than the Rantcast. Advertisers out there, if you're listening.
This is the most valuable real estate in all of podcasting.
At least Friday Manchester United related podcasting, based in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely. That is
with a niche audience.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and who isn't trying to target a niche audience? Everyone apparently is not trying to target a niche audience. Anyway, Blackburn game. I mean, we went into that under that brilliant bit of pressure, the good kind of pressure, because City dropped points, and you know the manner of their result meant that a point was quite good for them, given that they were 3-1 down and scored a couple of goals in a couple of minutes. But the fact that they couldn't convert that into a win was enormous, and it really 5 points or 6 points, the gap, not that important. What's really important is they finally dropped some points at home and looked like they were falling apart at the seams while doing it.
And fighting amongst themselves, yeah. The fallout from the Balotelli-Kolarov dispute has been ongoing, hasn't it? I mean, it seems that City are prepared to sell him now. More serious than that, though, is that it seems that Abu Dhabi has lost faith in Mancini, or at least putting pressure on him. Utterly bizarre, this. So the Times, the Telegraph and the Indie all carried the same story about Abu Dhabi giving Mancini till the end of the season to sort out his squad, that it's not just about winning the title but showing that he can lead, and there's a new contract in it for him if he can, blah blah blah. Almost word for word these pieces were, and of course you only get that when someone's been briefed, and talk about terrible timing that his employers have decided now during the run-in, when he's already under massive pressure and showing it, to then pile on a bit more pressure. It's absolutely hilarious. I mean, Alex Ferguson's office must have been rocking with laughter at that, and perfect for United, and of course the pressure that's been building up on City through their poor results and United's excellent run of wins culminated in that game that City drew 3-3 with Sunderland, and then United managed to ram it home, and we haven't always done that, have we? So it was important, I think, to take advantage of that eventually 80 odd minutes in.
Yeah, the performance was an interesting one. I mean, I certainly wasn't in despair before 80 minutes. We definitely put some nice moves together, and frankly the reason we didn't score earlier was basically because Blackburn defended really well, I thought.
They did. I mean, I thought the first half it was. I mean, obviously the shape was lopsided, wasn't it? With Valencia and being the only mode of attack for most of it, and it just felt a bit unbalanced in midfield, and Phil Jones didn't really add very much in there, I don't think. I mean, I still don't think he doesn't look like a midfielder to me. He just doesn't seem to know where he is on the pitch at any one time, and that's not a criticism of his talent. He's obviously an extremely talented lad. I just don't think he knows how to play that position.
I was thinking of you because of your description of him, kind of headless chicken aspect of his midfield play was very much in effect. He really was just running around.
Yeah, he was, and as a result he didn't really add anything. I don't think he added anything to United in an attacking sense in that first 45, and really wasn't required in a defensive sense, though in theory Blackburn might have had the extra man in there if United hadn't done that. It didn't make sense from United's shape's point of view. We could have had a player out wide left. Any player, and it doesn't really matter, it's not about personnel, it's more about shape, and Rooney could have dropped deeper and augmented midfield when necessary. And eventually that happened, right? The substitutions made a real difference in terms of United's penetration. You're right, you preface this by saying you weren't that worried and United weren't playing badly. And I don't think United were playing badly, but the shape wasn't helping at all. And it allowed Blackburn to defend because we weren't stretching them. There was no way to switch play from right to left to right. He could do if we had a left winger on there, because Rooney was cutting inside. I mean, you look at his the heat map of Rooney's position. He's pretty much central all the time. So that's why it went out to Valencia all of the time. And true, they couldn't cope with him, but it did make United very predictable.
Yeah, absolutely, because they couldn't cope with him, but they could cope with the players in the middle that he was putting the ball to, because they were very compact and very central. But
and United's not exactly a big team, right? There were tons of crosses flying over, but I don't remember that many opportunities that they created.
No, I agree, and the one thing that I thought was Ferguson handled the situation brilliantly. Okay, you could say that he basically erred on the side of caution in his team selection. He thought that, we'd been... I mean, I can't imagine he set too much store on the fact that we were overrun in the centre of midfield against Blackburn at Old Trafford, because our central midfield was Raphael and Park. So it doesn't really count. You can't make any decisions based on that central midfield. So, but I think he genuinely thought that Blackburn had been playing much better. They obviously could potentially mount a serious threat, and so he wanted to contain them for as long as possible. And his substitutions were pretty much spot on. There was none of that kind of, sometimes Fergie makes a substitution and you're like, why are you doing that, you crazy old fool? Normally we end up winning the league and we all look like fools, but still, there's that sense sometimes with Fergie substitutions. But this one was like, oh, thank goodness for that. That seems like the absolute appropriate reaction, and it got the absolute appropriate reaction from the team. Once we had that shape, there was more space available for Valencia, and his 50-50 shot cross gave us the closest thing we've had for a few years to a Makeda moment.
It was, yeah, and an honest answer as well, wasn't it? Asked by the Sky TV afterwards whether it was a shot or a cross, and he said 50-50. I think that's fair enough. I mean, he hit it as hard as he possibly could towards the far corner and hit the back of the net. Stunning goal, really. It kind of reminded me of those Brazilian goals from the late 70s. Not quite as good, but do you remember that? I think he was called a Dilson, and it was 78 World Cup, and he hit one from outside the box with the outside of his foot, and it bent into the far corner. So not quite that, but had echoes of it. And another stunning goal from Valencia. I mean, to go with the one he scored a couple of weeks ago, and just more stunning form from him. He's clearly United's major weapon in the title running.
Yeah, absolutely. And the wonderful moment of commentary which just went, Valencia! I was like, I love that. Valencia!
All the best players have an at the end. Valencia, Makeda.
That's one of the best players, and
I was admonished on Twitter in the past week for calling Macheda and not Makeda. So there are strict rules about when it's a chi and a chi in Italian, apparently.
Yeah, absolutely. And at Eaton Trey says, can you please unblock him for badgering you about Italian? He's very sorry. He just wanted to make sure you knew he was right.
You see, the problem I have with this, and this is why I use the block quite liberally, is that there's very little distinction between internet trolls and people who may have been trying to be helpful, but who just put it in a very troll-like manner.
He's a good lad. He's a Rantcast listener, Ed. You've got to unblock him. Them's the rules. He's the chap who a few weeks ago corrected me about my glove theory. So he's on your side with the gloves. So then, talking of goals from 1970s Brazilian teams, we put the ball in the net after 39 passes and a glorious wonder strike from Ashley Young in a goal reminiscent of Scholes against Panathinaikos. A wonderful tiki-taka build-up followed by an explosive finish from the 18-yard line.
Yes, you wouldn't see Barcelona doing that. They don't shoot from further than 3 yards out. There you go. It was a stunning goal, yeah, and another one for Ashley Young's growing collection of fine long-range strikes.
I mean, you have to say, for all that he had a very patchy mid-season following injury and playing with an injury for a while, he has had a very significant impact numbers-wise in his first season at United, hasn't he?
Yeah, so that large proportion of the middle of the season where he first lost form, and that may well have been to do with the fact that he gained an injury and then subsequently was out for some time afterwards. So that's a significant factor in Ashley Young's season, and therefore our judgment of him this season. But start of the season, he was excellent, and he appears to be in good form coming into the end of the season too. So, which is all good. I still don't think he was ever going to be the signing that transformed United from second place in the Champions League final to successors to Barcelona. of course not. But he's proven to be a good squad player. If he can keep himself fit and consistent, next season he'll be a real weapon.
I mean, I kind of agree with you, but given the state of the Premiership at the moment, he already is a real weapon. Despite the fact that he went missing for a good chunk of the season, he'll end up having a significant say in where the title goes, probably, one way or another. But you're right. I mean, it's the whole debate about how good United are at the moment, and our complete capitulation in Europe both times round puts a weird spin on how good we are. But the bookies are paying out us winning the league, and if we might not, I mean, we still might not win the league, but we definitely got, I don't know, we're definitely looking well more like it than we thought we would be at this stage.
Yeah, well, the important thing about it now is given the fixtures, is that it's completely in United's hands. If we don't win the league, given the teams we have to play, City, we can lose that one 27-0 now. I'd really rather we didn't, but we could do, and it doesn't matter because if United match City's points total in the other games, United is still going to win the league, right? And that is significant, and the teams we play are all pretty average. So if United do not win the league from here, it's their own fault.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And they've put themselves in a fantastic position to go out from here and win the league. And it's super exciting. After that Blackburn game is the most excited I've been about a United goal since the Champions League final. It was incredible. It was a wonderful moment because the amount of pressure that lifts and the amount of belief that it gives to the team to score a goal like that, and the amount of pressure it heaps on City, who don't look like they're dealing very well with their position. It's remarkable. Somebody was saying, I think on the Football Weekly podcast, it's remarkable how City they're being about the whole thing. Given that, this is a complete reboot of the Manchester City concept, totally fresh money, fresh stadium, fresh players, no fresh fans yet, but the theory is that they'll be coming too at some point. But, it really is at the moment, same old City, just get themselves into a good position and then muck it up to watch us do something glorious.
As always, and they'll be invading the streets of Guildford soon. Let me tell you, because that's where all United fans come from. Apparently, I'm not actually sure where Guildford is.
It's in Essex, isn't it?
Somewhere like that.
I don't really know where Essex is, if I'm honest.
So, if you were excited about that goal, a young man was super excited about United's victory. Sam Jones, Manchester City youth team player, took to Twitter to say, "Yes, United, yes, Ashley Young, you god, you king." He's been admonished by the club and had to put out an apology.
He did, saying he's very sorry to all City fans and he's been made aware of his responsibility to City. And but a significant part of that responsibility is to not be really excited when United score, especially since his employers are the ones who suffer. It's a remarkable lapse of judgment from the young man.
It is, but it just goes to show that once a red, always a red.
Yeah, the city is yours. The city is yours. Your kids tweet about us. Are you sure?
He really should just switch allegiances and come over to United. To be honest, I've never seen the kid. I don't know whether he's any good or not, but he's clearly at the wrong club. I'd rip up that contract, Mr. Jones, and then head over to, the Carrington training grounds are not very far apart, are they? Talking of youngsters, Larnell Cole's fine goal this week. If you haven't seen it, get to beautifullyred.co.uk. They've got a nice GIF. I don't know whether it was 38 passes, but a fantastic team goal and a volleyed finish. United reserves playing in the Dallas Cup at the moment. The reserved season's always pretty short and there's big gaps in it, so they're taking the break and over in the States playing quite a few good games and getting some good results as well.
The big grown-up United took a break as well, didn't they? And Fergie took him to Scotland because I'm pretty sure he believes that has some sort of magical powers whereby everyone who goes to Scotland becomes a better person in some way. Interesting, and early on in the game against Blackburn it perhaps did look like that hadn't exactly had the desired effect because it wasn't quite working. But by the end of the game, that whole kind of team spirit and togetherness of United seems thoroughly intact and a real counterpoint to City fighting over free kicks. And it's interesting, the Balotelli situation, because, on one hand you've had like papers and the general kind of, making Balotelli t-shirts and making him a kind of lovable figure and people ludicrously comparing him with Eric, and Noel Gallagher giving a fawning interview with him on Football Focus. But on the other hand, you've had people like Alan Hansen saying, he's a disgrace and he's completely lets down his team and his talent isn't worthy of that kind of attitude. He's not. You can get away with it, as he says. You can get away with it if you're a world beater, and he's definitely not a world beater. I'm reluctant to agree with Alan Hansen, but it seems to be that his side of the argument is holding a bit more weight at the moment.
I have to say I'm probably with you there. I hear Roberto Mancini praise Balotelli as much as he criticises him. He's called him variously among the 3 best players in the world. He talks about the best strikers in in the world, being Ronaldo, Messi and Balotelli. Frequently he's done this, as well as chiding him for his unprofessional behaviour. But the stats don't stack up. The goals, the assists, the decent performances. More subjectively, he disappears in games for huge periods of times before scoring goals. So I would be on your side here and say that he's just not worth the aggro. And it comes to a point when the aggro is too much. And it's not all the stuff outside of the game. I mean, it's amusing when he turns up at Inter's press conference, or when he sets fire to his own house, or goes and buys himself a skateboard, or whatever other crazy stuff he does. But the fact is that he's had a fight with Kolarov, with Mika Richards, with Jerome Boateng before that. He's obviously a very divisive figure. He's divisive on the pitch, in that he's arguing about stupid stuff, and it's obviously about his ego, not about the team's well-being. He apparently had a fight with Vincent Kompany in the dressing room after the Sunderland game. You'd think he's just not worth the trouble, and that's what Alan Hans was saying, and that's a kind of old-fashioned way of looking at it, but probably just true as well. I mean, can you imagine Ferguson putting up with any of that? I mean, it's one thing to say, yeah, you have to provide loads of output in order to get away with it, but Eric Cantona never tried to beat up any of his teammates or fought with anyone on the pitch. I mean, yeah, sure, he was a nutter, jumped into a crowd and fly kicked someone, and brought a lot of bad publicity to United, and all of that. You could say that's a really terrible thing and a lot worse than anything Balotelli's achieved, but he didn't disrupt the dressing room, and Ferguson would never allow it. I mean, anyone who did disrupt the dressing room, he got rid of them, and very sharpish.
Well, there's a huge existential difference between Balotelli and Cantona, and I'm obviously really poorly placed to make this judgment because I have massively Eric-tinted spectacles, but Eric Cantona is a man of genuine substance. His worst crime in football was to flying kick a man for kind of vicious abuse, and yeah, it's hugely unprofessional and really dangerous and reckless and all those kinds of things, but it was sort of human, and it wasn't motivated by selfishness in the way that Balotelli's antics and outrage are kind of, motivated by he's an extreme version of the modern footballer. Between him and Tevez, City have got the worst of the modern footballer in essence. But Cantona, he left football to go and be a serious actor, has made a fairly decent career out of that. He's a man of genuine substance in a way that Balotelli has shown no, because it's funny that he went and bought himself a skateboard instead of getting his mum an iron or whatever it was. But, the one story about him which kind of painted him in quite a good light and quite a serious character was the one about the kid at the training ground, getting a lift to school and going and seeing the headmaster, which Balotelli says is just not true at all.
Maybe Mancini ought to send Balotelli and Tevez up to the Scottish retreat and they can go and find themselves, or something along those lines.
Yes, absolutely.
They can take our title, but they'll never take our freedom.
No, they can take our title, but they'll never take our paycheck! Because that's what they're in it for, clearly. I was really impressed by United's spirit against Blackburn, and Ferguson's, you could say he erred on the side of caution in his initial team selection and didn't need to add that much to the central midfield, and our kind of 4-4-2 would have worked fine from the start. But, by the time we were playing a 4-4-2, Blackburn looked absolutely exhausted, and that's when we were able to put that really wonderful move together to make it 2-0. Worth pointing out that just before the first goal, you remember Ron Atkinson used to always, in his commentary, he'd always talk about turning points in games when a keeper would make an amazing save or someone wouldn't get booked when you thought they might, or you know what I mean? And we really had one in that game when Ferdinand put in an incredible tackle on Yakubu.
Right, yeah.
And Yakubu would have absolutely definitely scored, and that just felt like a Ron Atkinson turning point moment to me, and sure enough, Valencia's goal came within 5 minutes of that, I think.
Yeah, and aside from Ferdinand's tackle, a couple of excellent saves from David de Gea again. How many games in a row is that he's done something similar? He's gone from being a potential liability to being a points gainer for United. Let's be realistic about it. Not in the same way that Schmeichel was all those years ago, but he is now saving United points. Definitely, absolutely. I mean, Fulham and Blackburn, Norwich, Chelsea, these are all games at which United could have lost or drawn had it not been for some top-class saves from a very young man who's now finding his feet. And Ferguson said after the Blackburn game that he's really matured into the role.
A lovely hug between him and Eric Steele on the way off the pitch as well. Just a lovely human moment of, you could see obviously Eric Steele's done a huge amount of work on his confidence with him. You could just, there was a lot that passed between those two men in that hug. It was quite moving, I thought.
It prompted me, having seen that, to look back through some of the old articles. I hadn't been saving these quotes for some kind of, I told you so piece later in the year. It just felt like the right time to go back and look at them because they're just so vitriolic, and I felt at the time with all the criticism of De Gea, and it started very early as well in his time at United. In fact, actually, if you look at the Daily Mail, they started the criticism of him before he'd even played a game for United. His debut was it in Chicago? Anyway, on the American tour, they criticised the goal he let in there, and then it continued through the Charity Shield and on the West Brom game, and two mistakes in those games, and some really codswallop analysis of his psychological state. And this is a kid who was holed up in a hotel away from his family for the first time, away from his girlfriend, didn't know any of the people, didn't know the language, didn't know the team, and didn't know the style of play, and of course he was going to make mistakes. You don't need to have to be a football analyst to work this one out. He was always going to make mistakes. A big deal, and eventually his talent has shone through, and yes, it says something about the man, but the crisis was never as deep as the newspapers like to point out. And top of this tree, and he really does get me because he's a decent writer, but Patrick Barkley, who's banged on about it repeatedly, and I remember the game podcast from back in August after the Charity Shield, the Community Shield, and he was particularly vitriolic, called De Gea a jelly, and had said he just couldn't understand why Ferguson and his millions of coaches had watched this kid week after week and bought him for the first team. What on earth were they thinking? They've made this huge mistake, blah blah blah, and they've all been proven to be complete reactionary idiots, haven't they? Every single last one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only one that looks good out of all of that is Guillaume Balaguer, of course.
Who laughed at the press at the time who were criticising him, yeah.
There will be a feast of eaten words at the end of the season. And we're definitely starting to see that because they are starting to come round. And I suppose Paddy Barkley will be the last one when, De Gea makes a last-minute wonder save to win the European Cup for United or something. Paddy Barkley will finally acknowledge that he was wrong 8 seasons ago or whatever it is.
We'll see, but of course, if he then doesn't stop one that goes into the top corner, he'll be criticised for it. So yeah, some people they needed him to fail, as Ferguson pointed out a few months ago, and because it's always a better story than someone succeeding.
I mean, two things I wanted to say about what you said. First of all, you said it's not at the level of Peter Schmeichel in terms of points saved, but actually if you look at the number of points that De Gea has saved us, I would love to see somebody make a kind of informal idea of things that really good saves that De Gea has made that's earned us points. I mean, you started listing off games there, and it's a lot of games that he has really, really helped us win an awful lot of points this season. He's been absolutely instrumental in our form, the best period of form, which has been since Scholes came back. De Gea has been fantastic throughout it.
Yeah, well, look, the Liverpool game aside, post New Year, the Liverpool Cup game, he obviously got bullied by Andy Carroll. Aside from that, I don't think he's made a mistake, has he? I don't think you could blame him for any of the goals in the games against, say, Ajax and Athletic Bilbao that United lost. So I don't think you can actually attribute any mistakes to him post the Liverpool game. And it's been a run of 10 or 12 games in which he's been excellent. And I don't think we then go, oh, he's the next Schmeichel and he's never going to make a mistake again, because he's 21 years old, but I think he's an extremely talented 21-year-old. Funny on the United Rant forum talking about this, and someone said, yeah, but how long are we going to be able to keep hold of him now? Which is the sad reflection of the times, isn't it? Yeah, as soon as Casillas or Valdez are thought to be past their best at Madrid and Barcelona, and then he'll be off, is the cynical way of viewing it.
Well, I mean, we talked about this earlier in the season, and it's genuinely, I genuinely consider that to be a concern, because in some ways, I've felt all the way through this season, except maybe for a sort of 3 or 4 week period, that actually there's really not particularly a keeper anywhere in the world I'd swap De Gea for, just because of his age, his level of talent given his age. And if we can stay at a high level and increase our level of competitiveness in the Champions League, and if Barcelona somehow drop off, although that's not looking particularly likely to happen anytime soon, or if he's just becomes happy and settled in Manchester and, you know, the United keeper becomes his job for life, he's just the best choice out of any keeper anywhere, given how young he is, for how talented he is. And, you know, he could legitimately beat United for 20 years. It's not out of the question.
It's hard to foresee that, but yeah, of course. I mean, who knows?
But the other thing I wanted to say is, you said the crisis wasn't as deep as has been said, and I kind of know what you mean, but in a way, after the Blackburn game at home, you know, he really looked like a liability for a little while there. He really, not just like inclined to let in a goal, but he really looked completely shot to me. His confidence looked completely and utterly gone. And the nature of that kind of moment between him and Eric Steele on the way off the pitch at Ewood Park, it really did look like a man who had found something that he thought he'd lost again. I mean, you reading way too much into it there, of course, but I think the valley of crisis was indeed fairly deep for him.
In terms of his confidence, yes, but the analysis was that we'll never see this lad again. That's it. I remember reading pieces and seeing tweets that were saying, we'll never see him again. That's it. He's off. Ferguson won't accept this. It's another Massimo Taibi, and they completely misunderstood the situation. Completely. Taibi was bought as an experienced senior keeper to provide competition to Mark Bosnich at the time.
That's a horrible sentence to have to hear.
Yeah, I know. That puts some context on the crisis of United goalkeeping at that stage. I mean, you know, by comparison, we've now got probably the most talented 21-year-old keeper on the planet, and a very, very good keeper in Anders Lindegaard as well when he's back fit. So, I mean, you know, gone from the worst keeping crisis ever, this is another shocking Fergie mistake, quote unquote, about keepers, to being in a very, very good position in keeping at United.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And let's hope that he can take that excellent form forward to our next two games. I think the fact that it's at home to QPR is hugely significant, because QPR are obviously on the verge of trying to turn around their season, and Wigan as well are in that phase that relegation battling teams go through of, wait a minute, we really better win some games, otherwise this is all over.
Right, QPR beat Arsenal the other week. They beat Liverpool, their team that has found some form. It's a good, for that reason, that we've already been down to Loftus Road this season and won. And so, you know, Old Trafford, you'd still expect, despite all that good form, United to win. I mean, it's Fergie versus Hughes, and that always adds a little bit of extra spice to it, doesn't it? Because they're not the best defence. But the way Hughes' teams play, they'll play five in midfield, or play one up front, they'll try and defend, and that should play into United's hands. And we've got almost all of our attacking players fit, and Nani obviously not quite ready at the moment, but Young's fit, Rooney's playing really well, Valencia is absolutely on fire, and this ought to play into our hands in terms of how QPR are likely to set up at Old Trafford. And then Wigan, Wigan have done okay recently, haven't they? And you know, one at Anfield,
more than okay.
One at Anfield, they've picked up points, so they you never know, they could even make it out. I kind of like Wigan because they're a small club, and it's not a bad trip for United fans. And Roberto Martinez is a nice chap. He's, you know, one of the Ferguson's cabal of managers that has got around him, I suppose, and they play decent football and all of that, and so there's nothing really to hate about them that much, but we always beat them, always.
Yes, that's one of the reasons it's nice to have them around. Interesting, all this talk about Swansea recently, and Roberto Martinez, of course, made his reputation at Swansea, and actually the Brendan Rodgers revolution is a continuation is actually evolution, because the real revolution at Swansea was Roberto Martinez's doing.
And actually, I think I've heard Rodgers say this, actually. I think he's or at least someone at Swansea say this, that Martinez put in place the foundations for the football we see from Swansea, and he continued it at Wigan. He's taken a lot of criticism for it as well. You know, people in the game suggest that you can't play good football as a small club and still make it. But Wigan have managed to stay in the division despite their tiny budget for all this time. It's looking pretty ropey for them right now, but it's so close down the bottom. You wouldn't bet against them making it. I mean, there's so few points in it that they could still, it could well come down to a last day victory or draw or goal difference or any of that, really.
I mean, it's really ridiculous down at the bottom, isn't it? And we're going to have a big say in how that looks at the end of the week because of the games against QPR and Wigan. I mean, if both of those teams lose to us, which we of course hope they do, it's not good for them, but neither of them will have really been considering this the place they get their points between now and the end of the season.
It's Big Sam's mantra about, he's got gold, silver and bronze games, hasn't he? And the gold games are the ones, against United and Arsenal and Chelsea and City and all of that you don't expect to get anything out of. And then the the matches when you're down at the bottom against your fellow relegation sufferers or potential relegation sufferers are the ones you absolutely have to win. So I'm sure QPR and Wigan will be seeing it the same way. If they get anything out of games with us, it'll be a massive bonus, and it'll be disaster for United.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to predict basically the same starting lineup I did last week, which I was wrong on because Fergie he picked one of those sides where you kind of look at it and you try and work out where everyone's going to play, and at some point I've decided Rafael's going to play left back and Josie's going to play right back and Evra's going to play left wing, but no, it was a much more standard 4-3-3 with Rooney on the heavily inverted commas left. This game against QPR, I can't see anything other than De Gea, Rafael, Ferdinand, Evans, Evra, Young, Scholes, Carrick, Valencia, and then, I don't know, I think I'm going to say Hernandez again, even though he didn't have a particularly good game after Welbeck had a really bad game. But then after Welbeck came on, the boss really shouted at him, didn't he, when he tried a trick.
Yeah, right.
The boss laid into him, and I wonder if we're going to see Hernandez and Rooney up front.
It's really hard. I mean, this stage of the season, this is the only, the Wigan game's the only midweek game United have left in the season. So
that was my QPR lineup, by the way.
Well, yeah, no, sure. It'll come into the factoring whether he'll rotate a little bit, but it's not like they should be shattered. They haven't had tons of games recently, and they've had been having weeks off between games, which is unusual for this time of the season, and a reflection of the failure we've had in cup competitions and all of that. So there might be a little bit of rotation. I just hope we have a bit of balance. That's all. It's frustrating when United put in a subpar performance as they did for some part of the Blackburn game, and causal element of that was surely United's kind of mixed up formation, and I think at home to potential relegation candidate in QPR, he'll go for a much more balanced side, and it doesn't really matter the makeup of it after that, I think, and I'm sure we'll see all the big names playing, and it's hard to see past the United win as a result, and of course if United do win, we don't want to count our chickens. Let's count our chickens. That'll be 8 points ahead. The final whistle will go just a few minutes before City kick off against Arsenal at the Emirates, and aside from that blip Arsenal had at QPR recently, they've been in outstanding form, and you'd put good odds on City dropping points at Arsenal.
Yeah, although I don't know, it's one of those, isn't it, where Arsenal seem to be in good form, but they're stuttering slightly. City have been really struggling, but then they did manage that last gasp, snatch a point. So we'll see. But yeah, if they're 8 points down at that point, and by the way, Ed, just to clarify, you were not counting chickens, you were counting points. They're different to chickens. Chickens are the things that run around and lay eggs, and points are the things you get for winning football matches.
Glad you've clarified that.
I just wanted to make sure we all were on the same page.
Unlike our gloves debate, not on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, a City win wouldn't particularly surprise me, but nor would a grand capitulation in the capital surprise me. It's unbelievable to think that it's going so well at the moment, and despite the fact that you look at it and on paper everything looks like it should all be roses and sunshine from here to the end of the season, but just as the weather has turned snowy after a glorious couple of weeks of summer in England, I fear for the snow clouds on the horizon because there's just so much at stake, isn't there?
Yes, there is. Although, if past performance is any indicator of future performance, then City have been terrible away from home recently. Just really bad. And they've got 3 of the next 4 games before the derby are away from home. They're away to Arsenal this weekend. They've got West Brom at home, and West Brom playing pretty well. They go to Norwich and they go to Wolves. And now, like Arsenal aside, they're not playing any of the top sides. But you wouldn't bet against them dropping points in any of those games.
I'm not a gambling man, but if I was, I would definitely bet against them dropping points at Wolves.
But United by comparison with 3 at home, and okay, this season we've been stunning on the road and not so stunning at Old Trafford, but QPR and Wigan, you'd expect 6 points. I mean, it'll be massive disappointment if United don't pick up 6 points. Home to Villa and then home to Everton, and again, it's really hard to see past United getting 12 points out of these, and yes, it's a bit of hubris. I'm not always one for that, but playing well enough against teams who aren't really playing that well. I mean, Everton are playing pretty well, but they don't normally do it at Old Trafford, and we could well be going to City. I mean, if we match the points point for point, we'll go to City knowing that a win at the Etihad will bring us the title. If City drop 3 points anywhere, we could well be walking into the Etihad with the Guard of Honour. Now that would be something special, wouldn't it?
It's too good. It's too good to imagine.
I'm having this debate with a few people on Twitter. I can't work out what's better. Would it be better to stick one in their net in the 90th minute to win the title? Or would it be better to already won the title and have them have to stand there and clap us onto the pitch as champions?
Guard of Honour wins every time for me, because the whole thing about us sticking one in the 90th minute is we've got a lot of pain to get through to get there. And although that would be good, but yeah, no, Guard of Honour would be wonderful. I'm team Guard of Honour.
It could happen. But will Balotelli be part of it? Not only is he fighting his teammates, but apparently he's been shagging Wayne Rooney's hooker. A shocking story. I was shocked. Well, not really.
I'm sure this story is not true, given that it's not entirely clear that Wayne Rooney was involved.
Well, the interesting thing about it is that Mario Balotelli's agent came out and admitted it. He had a small fling, apparently, a small fling. So that bit's true. The Wayne Rooney bit was never actually officially confirmed, although of course there were no suits going out for defamation or slander or both or either against any of the newspapers involved, let alone the young ladies involved. So let's just assume they're all true and Balotelli's had some of Rooney's sloppy seconds.
Oh, really? It's literally one of my least favourite expressions in the English language. That it's so horrible. Talking of things that are horrible, something that wasn't horrible and I think is worth mentioning that we didn't mention in the Blackburn coverage was United's away support. Always excellent, but rarely... I mean, not always that spectacularly, mind-blowingly excellent.
7,000 fans, and Sunderland could take a lesson from this. You know, Blackburn were good enough to give a whole stand over to United and managed to control the hordes of rampaging Reds who are running through the town and raping the locals and all of that, which is apparently what Sunderland thinks is going to happen. And they've reduced our ticket allocation to 1,700 tickets for the final day of the season. Could be a crucial game still, and apparently won't release the reasons why they're doing that. But yeah, no, sorry to go off on a massive tangent there, but yeah, absolutely stunning support from the United faithful there. 90 minutes of giving it everything and quite a few anti-City songs in there, which is always fun, but then you think, yeah, we shouldn't be focusing on them so much, and so there were plenty of songs about old players and all the favourites as well.
Yeah, no, I mean, there was kind of a nice balance, I thought, between making fun of City, which was entirely justified, and because this is not just random City baiting, this is quite specific City baiting. We are in a title run-in with them. So, anti-City songs have more justification this season than they have ever before. Well, not ever before, but for a long time. And I guess the Sunderland ticket allocation, you watch that Blackburn game and it's like not entirely surprising that teams don't want us taking 7,000 fans there, because we make it into like a Bundesliga home game for United with that kind of atmosphere.
It's a real shame that it's not replicated at Old Trafford. Of course, they're trying to put together this singing section. I mean, it's a concept that's been around forever. I remember going to United as a wee boy, very little, and remember them talking about singing. Of course, there was a singing section then. It was called the Stretford End.
And also the K-stand.
And the K-stand, and there was plenty of banter between the two. And obviously it's gone over the years and people have been split up. So the idea of having a section at United where everyone could come together and try and recreate that kind of atmosphere. Of course, it looks like it's going to be less than 3,000 seats if it does happen.
Well, that's crazy. I mean, that's the thing. It's like, why do it in 3,000 seats? Why not give 10,000 seats over? Because there must be 10,000 people out of that 70,000 at Old Trafford every week who want to sing, surely.
Well, there are, but there's also a big block of executive, nicely padded, right in the centre of the Stretford End, have a meal beforehand and a prawn sandwich and a glass of champagne and pay double the amount seats as well.
Well, you just give the whole rest of the Stretford End over to, I mean, I don't know. It's just so odd, the whole United atmosphere thing.
What Gill and the rest of the management giveth, they taketh away as well, because it looks like, well, we talked about the trial for the Villa game coming up on the 15th of April when Villa fans will be in the third tier of the North Stand, and if you've ever sat there, I've done it once. I swapped for one game with a friend and I never do it again, because aside from your weird sort of cinema format view of the pitch you get, because the stand slopes down, so you get this kind of letterbox format view of the game, there's no atmosphere at all, because you're up in the gods and you can't hear anything from any of the other stands. You can't see the other stands for a start. So it's really weird, and I think that will take away something from the atmosphere because you won't be able to hear the opposition fans.
Well, on the other hand, I mean, legitimately, all you ever hear, except in the big games, is the opposition fans, and then, a pocket of 2,000 people at the back of the Stretford End or whatever it is that actually are trying to generate some sort of atmosphere. I just don't understand it. I don't understand why you go to football and treat it like theatre. It's like football matches are, as a live spectator event, a football match with a good atmosphere is completely different experience to a football match with a bad atmosphere. It's on a whole nother level, and that Fulham game on the Monday night, the support couldn't have been worse, in terms of atmosphere. And I kind of don't hold individuals who go to the games responsible for this. It's something about, the corporatisation of it and just the increasing culture. And what happens if 5 people get up in the middle of the South Stand and start, doing the United Calypso or whatever? Is everyone looking around and shushing them?
I've had season tickets in many stands at Old Trafford over the years, and I sat for quite a few years in the mid and late 90s in the South Stand, and that's exactly what happened. Even then, right? And this is through the seasons where the Stretford End was pulled down and it was turned into an all-seater bowl, and it's never expected in the South Stand. But that's fine, right? That's fine. But that's not that different from, you mentioned the Bundesliga. Okay, some absolutely stunning atmospheres there. When Dortmund games where there's 80,000 people going mental for the 90 minutes, that's brilliant. But across the rest of Europe, that doesn't happen either, and you'll get a pocket of ultras in one of the stands, and they're allowed to sing and dance and go mental and all of that. And if that alone was allowed at Old Trafford, that would make a difference to the atmosphere, because if you get a pocket of people singing, you encourage others.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I always feel like it's weird for me to be talking about this because I've never in my whole life been able to go and see United regularly for a variety of different circumstances. But whenever I've ever been there, I've not stopped singing from the moment I get there till the moment I leave, kind of thing, because it's the whole point of going, right? It's a participatory experience. And when you are lucky enough to sit at the back of the Stretford End, you kind of wonder why everyone goes on about the atmosphere at United not being good, because for 2,000 people or whatever, every game's got a pretty good atmosphere, except very rare games where even that part of the stand's flat.
There you go. That's a debate that's been held for quite some time, obviously.
What do you think of the singing section before we move on?
So look, I'm in favour of something along those lines happening, but this is not new, right? This has been debated for a very long time, and if it happens, it'll be good. If it's done in the right way, if people are allowed to move together and join up with their mates, and it's a decent block of seats, and it's going to have to mean some juggling around the seats and that kind of thing, and it would be a good move if something like that can happen. I fear that it's going to be split up by the corporate seats there, and maybe the club not playing ball over moving seats around and that kind of thing, and that will take away from what it is, and it's not the cure for all ills as well. It's certainly not going to cure the problem over ticket prices, over ticket allocation, over the fact that the supporters groups and the club haven't been able to sort out the problem with away tickets, and the problem that a lot of away tickets seem to be going to corporate agencies at the moment who sell them. It's legalised touting, and all of these problems have not been solved. So don't pretend that if we get a singing section at Old Trafford that it's going to solve all the other problems, because there are lots of them and they haven't been sorted.
No, absolutely. But just in terms of the problem of how incredibly flat 75,000 people can make an atmosphere.
Hopefully it will help. Hopefully it will spark other areas of the ground into life as well, and maybe we'll get that kind of challenging atmosphere between the K Stand and Stretford End as we used to get.
I feel compelled at this point to give a shout out to @HappyHero and say that his little bit of the North Stand is apparently extremely vocal. I think it might just be him, but it's people around him as well too, because I'm sure there are pockets, but given the magnitude of the stadium, it doesn't necessarily generate a wide atmosphere, but for those individuals lucky enough to be in a pocket of atmosphere, it does make an enormous difference. Anyway, so let's hope the atmosphere is okay against QPR and that our predictions are close to being on the money. Which is neither of those seem particularly likely, I've got to say.
Very true. So predictions, I think United are going to win twice this week. I wouldn't think anything else, would I? I think it's going to be fairly comfortable against QPR. They're not particularly great on the road. They're not particularly great anywhere, really, even if they have got a bit of form of late. So I think United will win that one 3-0. I think we'll go to Wigan. It'll be fairly tight, and one of those late goals will take it for United, and then it's going to be 2-1.
I'm going 2-0, 2-0. The double 2-0 to United. So You've said 3-0 and 2-1, and I've said 2-0 and 2-0.
Also, it's for a bonus prediction. I think Arsenal are going to beat City 1-0 at the Emirates.
I'm going to say that's going to be a draw. I don't know, I got a weirdly bad feeling. In fact, you know what? I'm going to give you my honest prediction for that rather than what I would like to happen, and that's that City are going to win that 2-1. Boo! A fantastic week for United fans, really, and it's just glorious to be atop the league at this stage of the season, and I guess you're pretty confident now that United are going to go on and win the title.
I do a pre-season prediction, don't I? And I just for the record, just in case anyone thinks I edit it, which I never do, I said United would come second this season, so I certainly wasn't that confident at the start of the season, and we've surpassed expectations. If the run of fixtures go like I think it might, and we don't get hammered at Eastland and we at least get a point, we could end up with the biggest points total United has ever got in the Premier League.
It's just extraordinary, and I mean,
which is extraordinary because I still don't equate this side with being anywhere near the best sides Ferguson's ever had. But if they rack up the most amount of points, it'd be hard to argue against that.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about it is it's not the best collection of individuals, and it's not even the best team, but it might be the most professional outfit he's ever had. It might be something along those lines, or he has just got so good at winning, and also we've kind of sucked the lifeblood out of the Premier League as well. Like everyone else in the league apart from City is rubbish, basically. Arsenal were rubbish for the first third of the season. Chelsea have basically been below par almost all season. Newcastle have obviously been a bit of a revelation. Talking of you not editing your predictions for where teams will finish, I'm pretty sure you have them bottom of the league.
I can't remember. I certainly had them relegated. Yeah, I mean you can go back on United Rank Co UK and their predictions are on there in August.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But just the quality of opposition is just not there this season.
No, I think you're right. I think it's the quality of the Premier League is degraded, and that's been shown in European competition. It'll be interesting in the summer really, because obviously City will try and spend big, and they need to get rid of quite a few players, and so assuming they do that, they will spend big again, simply because they will have brought in quite a bit of cash too. It looks like Roman Abramovich is prepared to finance a big spending spree at Chelsea. I'm sure Liverpool will throw some money at it. Arsenal have got tons of money in the bank. I mean, they're a very well run club financially speaking, and even though they built the new stadium, they are a club with plenty of cash reserves that they can go use. I don't think United are going to spend very much, but generally speaking, there's going to be a little bit of a shift. So over 3 years or so, the euro pound exchange rate was not good for the Premier League. It's been creeping the other way, so you buy a bit more euros with your pound these days than you used to be able to. And of course, the 50% top rate has gone, although that doesn't come into effect until 2013, but that gives top clubs an extra 5 percentage points of competitiveness in terms of wages, and so that will make a difference. It'll mean that players from Europe are slightly cheaper, both in terms of the absolute transfer fee you have to pay and the weekly wages. So we could see this small blip in the Premier League standard of competitiveness eroded. So it might well be that this is a really good title for United to win, because it's going to be even harder next season.
Yeah, I mean that seems like a reasonable expectation, but what I'm taking from what you're saying about all that stuff about affordability of players and that Ronaldo's definitely coming back in the summer.
Oh yeah, totally. Undoubtedly, United are putting in a 12-figure bid for him.
He scored another ridiculous free kick in the Champions League. It's very upsetting, Ed.
Yeah, stunning goal after stunning goal for Ronaldo at the moment. Yeah, scored a goal at the weekend where he was barely moving, and it was about 30 yards out, and he spanked it into the top corner.
He's ridiculous. He's a parody of himself. Like he's always been a parody of himself in terms of his attitude and the way he carries himself, and he's the flappiest arms in all of arm flapdom. But he's becoming a footballing.
I don't know. Rooney gives it a good flappy arms flappingness.
He does, but I think he's number two, and I think he learned from Ronaldo his arm flappiness. I think if Rooney had not been at the same club as Ronaldo for such a long time, he'd be less flappy. That's my view, although it could be the other way around. But he's also like a parody of himself on the pitch. Like his output is just ridiculous. It's like you have this vision of Ronaldo as being a kind of goal-scoring, destructive footballing machine, and he's just like he's almost sarcastically good.
There you go. And all Messi could do is score a couple of penalties this week. Rubbish.
Yeah.
I told you the boy's no good. He's only got 58 goals this season.
a little word for the fact that our Premier League competitors down south have done what United singularly failed to do and progressed to the Champions League semi-final. I was thinking, God, they must be the worst team in the semi-final for ages. And I was like, apart from since last season when Schalke were in the semi-final, but I think it's going to be a similar level of mismatch that Schalke was against us last season, because Chelsea have been dreadful.
Roberto Mancini has got them playing quite a defensive formation and system at the moment, hasn't he? So which will just basically play into Barcelona's hands. I can't see anything other than a comfortable Barcelona victory, especially over 2 legs. I mean, maybe as a one-off game, Chelsea could go ultra negative and do a bit of a Mourinho on them, but I can't see it over 2 legs, and I'm sure we'll see a Barca Real final now, which will be just kind of boring, to be honest. I think, they seem to play each other every other week at the moment, and we know exactly what we're going to get. There'll be a lot of stropping around, players falling all over the place, and then Barcelona will win and Mourinho will accuse them of there being some kind of UEFA level conspiracy to make sure Barcelona win everything.
We're prediction crazy here, and I predict we should wrap this show up. We'll be back at the same time next week, and in the meantime, if you want to get hold of us, you can find us on Twitter. Ed is at United Rant. I'm at UTD Rantcast. As always, reviews on iTunes very much appreciated, as are comments over on the show page at unitedrant.co.uk. The other thing you can do to help us out, if you feel so inclined, is hit unitedrant.co.uk/donate and chip in a couple of shekels towards the cost of running the Rantcast.
That's all very good. We will see you next week after a couple of fine United victories and City dropping points at the Emirates. You know it's going to happen.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.